She just wanted to feel beautiful. One crimson dress, one mirror selfie, one tap to post. But when the most dangerous man in Chicago comments "delete it" from a private account and shows up at her apartment 20 minutes later, Penelope realizes some men don't just admire, they possess. Penelope Russo stared at the full-length mirror in her West Loop apartment, her heart doing a frantic, erratic flutter against her ribs. For the first time in her 26 years, she felt genuinely, undeniably breathtaking. Penelope was fat. She carried her weight in her thick thighs, her soft, pronounced stomach, and her heavy hips. For years, she had hidden beneath oversized sweaters, dark colors, and the defensive, self-deprecating humor society demanded of women her size. But tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was her best friend, Bianca's birthday, and after months of grueling overtime managing a high-end Italian restaurant in the Gold Coast, Penelope had splurged. The dress was a custom-tailored crimson silk slip that clung to every single curve, dip, and roll of her body. It didn't try to hide her size, it weaponized it. The deep cowl neckline highlighted the swell of her chest, and the high slit exposed a thick, smooth leg. She had spent an hour on her makeup, pinning her dark curls up in a messy, elegant cascade. "You look like a literal goddess," she whispered to herself, practicing a smile. She picked up her phone, opened Instagram, and angled her body. She snapped 3 photos. In the best one, her head was tilted slightly, a soft, confident smirk playing on her red painted lips, the silk practically glowing against her olive skin. Without giving herself the chance to overthink it, she typed a simple caption: "Seeing red." She hit post. Almost immediately, the notifications began rolling in. Bianca commented with a string of fire emoji. Old high school friends liked it. Her phone buzzed rhythmically on her vanity as she turned to grab her clutch and slip into her heels. She felt a rare, intoxicating surge of adrenaline. She was visible, and for once, she wasn't apologizing for it. Then her phone buzzed with a different rhythm, a single distinct chime that she had assigned to a very specific, very dangerous contact. Penelope froze, her hand hovering over her lipstick. A cold dread, completely at odds with her newfound confidence, washed over her. She slowly picked up the device. It was an Instagram notification. @DV88 commented, "Delete it." Her breath hitched in her throat. Dominic Vitiello. He didn't follow her. She didn't follow him. His account was private, bearing no profile picture, boasting 0 posts, and following only a handful of luxury watch brands and architectural digests. But she knew exactly who it belonged to. Everyone in her neighborhood knew who the Vitiello family was, even if the local news only ever referred to them as prominent real estate developers. Dominic was the head of the family. He was 32, ruthlessly pragmatic, and terrifyingly quiet. He was also the man who had bought the commercial building her family's struggling bakery operated out of 2 years ago. When her father couldn't make the rent, Dominic hadn't evicted them. Instead, he had walked into the bakery, taken one long, intense look at Penelope, covered in powdered sugar and flour, and quietly told her father the rent was forgiven, indefinitely. Since that day, Dominic had been a phantom in her life. He would show up at her restaurant, sitting at a private corner booth, drinking black coffee and watching her work. He never flirted. He never made small talk. He just watched. His dark, impenetrable eyes would track her movements, his gaze heavy and possessive, making her skin prickle with a mixture of terror and a forbidden, shameful heat. Penelope stared at the screen. Delete it. A sudden flare of indignation sparked in her chest. For years, she had let society dictate how she should look, where she should take up space, and what she was allowed to wear. She had finally taken a step toward loving her own skin, and this arrogant criminal billionaire thought he could command her to hide it? Her thumb hovered over the comment. She could delete the comment itself. She could block him. But blocking Dominic Vitiello felt like playing Russian roulette with a fully loaded gun. Instead, her stubbornness took over. She typed a reply. @Penny Russo replied, "Excuse me?" "No." She locked her phone, tossing it into her purse, her hands shaking slightly. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. I was probably just exerting control. He was used to giving orders and having everyone in Chicago scramble to obey. Well, she wasn't one of his soldiers. She was just a civilian, a woman going to a birthday party. 10 minutes passed. She poured herself a small glass of wine to calm her nerves, sipping it as she waited for the Uber she had just hailed. Outside, the Chicago sky rumbled, threatening a late summer thunderstorm. Her phone rang. It wasn't an Uber notification. The caller ID simply read, DV. Penelope stared at the glowing screen as it vibrated against the marble countertop. She let it ring out. It went to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text came through. DV. Open your front door. Penelope's stomach dropped to her knees. She lived in a secure building with a doorman and key fob entry for the elevators. There was no way he was here. He couldn't be here. It had only been 20 minutes since she posted the photo. Before she could even process the impossibility of it, a heavy, authoritative knock echoed through her apartment. Thud. 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 It wasn't the frantic knocking of an intruder, but the measured, patient strike of a man who knew he held all the power. Penelope swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly completely dry. She walked toward the door on trembling legs, her red heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. She peered through the peephole. Standing in the dimly lit hallway was Dominic Vitiello. I was wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, the jacket unbuttoned to reveal a black dress shirt. He looked massive, his broad shoulders practically filling the frame of the door. His dark hair was slightly damp, indicating he had been out in the rain, and his jaw was locked in a tight, furious line. Behind him, standing by the elevator banks, she could see the silhouette of Lorenzo, his heavily scarred enforcer. Thud. Thud. Penelope. A deep, gravelly voice bled through the heavy wood of her door. Open it. Now. Penelope's trembling fingers fumbled with the deadbolt. She unlocked the door and pulled it open just a fraction, keeping the chain engaged. Dominic's dark eyes instantly locked onto hers. Through the narrow crack, the sheer intensity of his stare was suffocating. He smelled of rain, expensive vetiver cologne, and something distinctly metallic, like gun oil. Take the chain off, he ordered. His voice was low, devoid of shouting, but it carried a terrifying weight. Dominic, what are you doing here? Penelope asked, trying to keep her voice steady. She hated how small she sounded. How did you even get past Hector at the front desk? Hector took an early lunch break, Dominic replied, his face expressionless. The chain, Penelope. Before I break the frame. She knew he wasn't bluffing. With a shaky sigh, she closed the door, slid the chain free, and opened it wide. Dominic didn't wait for an invitation. He stepped into her apartment, bringing the cold chill of the hallway in with him. He reached behind him, shut the door with a firm click, and slid the deadbolt back into place. For a long, agonizing moment, he didn't speak. He just looked at her. His gaze dropped from her wide, panicked eyes down to the cowl neck of her red dress. She watched his pupils dilate, the dark irises nearly swallowing the brown. His eyes dragged lower, tracing the heavy curve of her breasts, the dip of her waist, the wide flare of her hips, and the thick expanse of her thigh exposed by the slit. Penelope instinctively crossed her arms over her stomach, a defensive habit returning in full force under his microscopic appraisal. The confidence she had felt 15 minutes ago vanished, replaced by the acute, agonizing awareness of her size. Dominic stepped forward immediately, closing the space between them. He reached out, his large, calloused hands gently but firmly gripping her wrists, pulling her arms away from her body. "Don't cover yourself," he murmured, his voice suddenly hoarse. "Don't you ever hide from—" Penelope gasped softly as his heat radiated against her. "Then why did you tell me to delete the picture?" She fired back, a spark of anger cutting through her fear. "If you think I'm embarrassing myself, if you think a woman my size shouldn't be wearing something like this, stop." Dominic's voice cracked like a whip, silencing her instantly. He dropped her wrists, running a hand through his damp hair, a gesture of pure frustration. "Do you honestly think that's why I told you to take it down? You think I look at you and see anything other than absolute perfection?" Penelope blinked, stunned. "Then why?" Dominic took another step closer, forcing her to back up until her spine hit the wall of the entryway. He planted a hand on the wall beside her head, boxing her in. "Because," he growled, leaning in so close she could feel his breath on her cheek. "3 minutes after you posted that picture, it had 200 likes. 10 minutes in, it was saved 14 times. 14 men, Penelope, saved a picture of you looking like this to their personal devices." "It's just Instagram, Dominic," she argued, her heart hammering wildly against her ribs. "That's how the app works. Not when it comes to you," he snapped, his composure finally fracturing. "Do you have any idea the restraint it takes for me to stay away from you? I bought your father's bakery so I could keep an eye on you. I eat at your restaurant 3 times a week, just to make sure you get to your car safely. I have kept my distance because my world is violent, and you are gentle." Penelope stared at him, completely paralyzed by the confession spilling from the most feared man in the city. "But you," he continued, his gaze dropping to her lips, "you put yourself on display. You broadcasted exactly what is mine to the entire world." "I am not yours," Penelope retorted, though her voice lacked conviction. Dominic let out a dark, humorless chuckle. "Tell that to the Moretti family." The name sent a spike of ice through her veins. The Morettis were a rival syndicate, operating out of the South Side. Their bloody feud with the Vitiellos was regular fodder for the city's underground rumor mill. "What do they have to do with this?" she whispered. "They have people who monitor my digital footprint," Dominic explained, his tone turning deadly serious. "They know I don't use social media. They also know I have a private account to keep tabs on my businesses. I have exactly one person on my search history, Penelope. You." He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out his phone, tapping the screen and holding it up for her to see. It was a screenshot of her photo, sent from an encrypted number. Below the photo was a text. "She looks sweet, Vitiello. Maybe we'll pay her a visit tonight." Penelope's blood ran cold. The red dress suddenly felt like a target painted on her back. "They intercepted the traffic on my phone," Dominic said, pocketing the device. "They saw you post it. They saw me comment. They know you mean something to me. By the time I saw that message, they already had your address." "Oh my God," Penelope breathed, clapping a hand over her mouth. "Dominic, my roommate, Bianca is already at the club." "Bianca is safe," Dominic interrupted smoothly. "Lorenzo dispatched 2 of my men to the club 20 minutes ago. They're watching her from a distance. She won't even know they're there." He looked down at her, his expression softening just a fraction, though the lethal edge in his eyes remained. "I didn't tell you to delete it because I was ashamed of you, Penelope. I told you to delete it because you are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, and the thought of another man looking at you makes me want to burn this city to the ground, and the thought of my enemies using you to get to me." He trailed off, his jaw flexing. "I won't allow it." "So what happens now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Now," Dominic said, stepping back and pulling a sleek black handgun from his waist holster to check the chamber before smoothly tucking it away again. "You pack a bag. You're coming with me." "Where?" "To a secure property I own in Lake Forest," he replied, his tone brooking no argument. "Until I deal with the Morettis, my men are already securing the perimeter of this building, but we need to move before they regroup." Penelope looked at her apartment, at the life she had built, and then back at the imposing, dangerous man standing in her hallway. She was fat, normal, boring Penelope Russo, a restaurant manager who just wanted to look pretty for one night. Now, she was caught in the middle of a Mafia turf war, because a ruthless boss was obsessively in love with her. "I can't just leave," she protested weakly. "My job—" "I own the restaurant, Penelope," Dominic stated flatly. Her jaw dropped. "What? Since when?" "Since you complained to me 3 months ago that the owner was cutting corners on the seafood supplier and stressing you out," he said casually, as if buying a multi-million-dollar establishment was equivalent to picking up groceries. "I bought him out the next morning. You have unlimited paid leave starting right now." He reached out, his knuckles gently brushing against the soft curve of her cheek. The contrast of his rough hand against her skin sent a jolt of electricity straight to her core. "Go pack," he commanded softly. "And Penelope?" She looked up into his dark, obsessive eyes. "Keep the dress on." The tires of the armored Cadillac Escalade hissed violently against the rain-slicked pavement of the Kennedy Expressway. Penelope sat rigidly in the cavernous back seat, the luxurious leather doing nothing to soften the overwhelming reality of her situation. She was still wearing the crimson silk slip dress, though Dominic had draped his heavy charcoal suit jacket over her bare shoulders before they exited her building. The fabric smelled intoxicatingly of his vetiver cologne and the sharp, dangerous scent of gunpowder. Beside her, Dominic was a statue carved from shadow. The neon lights of the passing Chicago skyline flickered across his hard profile, highlighting the sharp angle of his jaw and the relentless, predatory focus in his dark eyes. In the driver's seat, Lorenzo navigated the heavy storm with terrifying precision, silent as a ghost. "You're shaking," Dominic observed. His voice was a low rumble over the steady beat of the windshield wipers. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact that seemed to bother him immensely. "I'm sitting in a bulletproof SUV with a Mafia boss who just essentially kidnapped me from my own apartment," Penelope replied, her voice remarkably steady despite the frantic fluttering of her pulse. She pulled his jacket tighter around her chest, acutely aware of how her thick thighs pressed against the leather seat. "I think shaking is a perfectly reasonable physiological response, Dominic." Dominic turned his head, his gaze sliding over her, with that same heavy, consuming intensity she had noticed back at her apartment. He reached across the center console, his large, calloused hand capturing hers. His thumb stroked the soft, fleshy back of her hand, the touch impossibly gentle for a man capable of such violence. "You are not kidnapped, Penelope. You are protected," he corrected smoothly, his thumb continuing its hypnotic rhythm. "There is a very distinct difference. Kidnapping implies I plan to hold you for ransom. Protection means I plan to slaughter anyone who even thinks about demanding one from me." Penelope swallowed hard, her eyes dropping to their joined hands. The sheer size difference was staggering. "Why me?" she whispered. The insecurity she had battled her entire life, bubbling to the surface. "You could have anyone in this city. Women who fit into sample sizes. Women who don't spend their days covered in flour or smelling like garlic and braised short ribs. Women who belong in your world." Dominic shifted closer, the leather groaning under his weight. He released her hand, only to bring his fingers to her chin, tilting her face up so she was forced to meet his unyielding stare. "Do not insult my intelligence by implying I don't know what I want," Dominic growled softly, his eyes flashing with a possessive fire that made her breath hitch. "Sample sizes? Do you think I want a woman made of fragile glass? I want a woman with substance. I want the curves that fill my hands, the softness that I can bury myself in after living in a world made entirely of sharp edges. I watched you for 2 years, Penelope. I watched you command a kin full of men, twice your age. I watched you laugh loudly, eat unapologetically, and move with a quiet, undeniable power." He leaned in, his lips hovering mere inches from hers. "You are exactly what I want. Every soft inch of you. Every curve. The fact that you don't realize how devastatingly beautiful you are only makes me want to lock you away, so no one else can figure it out." Before Penelope could process the overwhelming confession, the Escalade veered sharply off the main highway, turning onto a secluded, heavily wooded road in Lake Forest. Towering iron gates loomed in the darkness, swinging open automatically as Lorenzo approached. The estate was a modern fortress of glass, steel, and dark stone, surrounded by acres of impenetrable forest. Armed men in black tactical gear patrolled the perimeter, their silhouettes illuminated by the flashes of lightning. "Welcome to your temporary home," Dominic said, stepping out of the vehicle and extending a hand to help her down. As Penelope stepped onto the wet driveway, a sudden piercing beep echoed from Lorenzo's encrypted communication device. The enforcer's scarred face paled instantly. He turned to Dominic, the silence of the night suddenly pregnant with a new, terrifying tension. "Boss," Lorenzo said, his voice grim. "It's the perimeter team at the restaurant. They just caught someone trying to breach the back alley security cameras. We have a rat." Dominic's expression morphed from obsessive lover to ruthless syndicate leader in a fraction of a second. "Who?" "Matteo Rossi, her sommelier." Penelope felt the blood drain from her face. Matteo. Sweet, charming Matteo, who brought her coffee every morning and helped her pair wines for their VIP guests. "Bring him to the basement," Dominic ordered, his voice devoid of all humanity. "And secure the house. Nobody gets in." He turned back to Penelope, his eyes black pools of impending violence. "Let's get you inside." The interior of the Lake Forest estate was as imposing as the exterior. Minimalist, cold, and echoing with the silent hum of absolute security. Dominic led Penelope into a sprawling master suite on the top floor, locking the heavy mahogany door behind them. Penelope paced the length of the room, her bare feet sinking into the plush, charcoal rug. The adrenaline was finally crashing, leaving behind a cold, nauseating panic. "Matteo," she muttered, shaking her head wildly. "I don't understand. Why would Matteo be working for the Morettis? He's a sommelier. He recommended a beautiful Barolo for the duck ragout yesterday. He doesn't know anything about the Mafia." Dominic walked over to a crystal decanter on a low table, pouring 2 fingers of amber liquid into a glass. He handed it to her. "Drink. It will settle your nerves." She took it with trembling hands, the whiskey burning a trail down her throat. "The Morettis are parasites," Dominic explained coldly, stripping off his shoulder holster and placing the weapon on the nightstand. "They look for weaknesses. Matteo has a gambling debt that exceeds $500,000. The Morettis bought his debt 3 months ago. In exchange, he became their eyes and ears inside your restaurant." "But what could he possibly tell them?" Penelope demanded, clutching the glass. "I run a kitchen, Dominic. We talk about food costs and reservations." "He told them about me," Dominic said, his gaze locking onto hers. "He told them that the untouchable, ruthless head of the Vitiello family comes in 3 times a week, sits in a corner booth, and never takes his eyes off the manager. He told them that I bought the building for you. He told them you were my only weakness." Penelope gasped softly, sinking onto the edge of the massive king-sized bed. "So the Instagram picture was just the trigger," Dominic confirmed, walking slowly toward her. "They already knew you were my obsession. But when they saw you post that picture, looking like a goddess drenched in blood-red silk, they knew it would provoke a reaction from me. They intercepted my network, left that comment to ensure I'd rush to your apartment, and planned to ambush me there." He stopped right in front of her, gently prying the empty whiskey glass from her fingers and setting it aside. He dropped to his knees, a position of total submission from a man who bowed to no one, resting his hands on her thick, bare thighs. "I underestimated their desperation," Dominic murmured, looking up at her with a fierce, burning devotion. "I thought I could keep you safe by keeping my distance. I thought shielding you from the blood and the violence of my world was the best way to love you." Penelope's breath hitched. Love. He had said love. "I was wrong," Dominic continued, his hands sliding up the smooth silk covering her hips, tracing the soft, generous curves of her stomach. "Hiding you only made you vulnerable. From this moment forward, Penelope, there is no more distance. You are not a civilian in the crossfire. You are the queen of the Vitiello syndicate." "Dominic, I don't know anything about this world," she whispered, tears pricking the corners of her eyes. "I'm just a normal fat girl from the West Loop who likes baking bread and drinking cheap wine." "You are a queen," he repeated fiercely, his thumbs pressing into the soft flesh of her waist, anchoring her to him. "And this body, this beautiful, perfect body that you have spent your life apologizing for, it is my religion. I will burn down the Moretti Empire. I will slaughter every man who dares to look at a picture of you, and I will drown Matteo Rossi in the Chicago River for daring to put you in danger, all to keep you safe." He leaned forward, pressing a reverent, searing kiss to the soft swell of her stomach through the red silk. The touch sent a shock wave of electricity through her entire body. "I will handle Matteo. I will handle the Morettis," Dominic promised, rising to his feet and pulling her up with him. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her heavy curves flush against his hard, muscular frame. "All you have to do is trust me, and never, ever delete a picture of yourself again. Let the world see what belongs to me." Penelope looked up into the dark, dangerous eyes of Dominic Vitiello. She saw the violence there, the capacity for absolute destruction. But beneath it, she saw a terrifying, unyielding devotion that was entirely, exclusively hers. She had spent her life trying to shrink, trying to take up less space in a world that told her she was too much. But in Dominic's arms, her size wasn't a flaw. It was an empire he was willing to go to war for, slowly, deliberately. Penelope reached up, her fingers threading into his dark hair, and pulled his face down to hers. "Burn them all to the ground, Dominic," she whispered against his lips. And as the storm raged outside, the Mafia boss finally claimed his queen. Did Penelope make the right choice by leaving with a ruthless Mafia boss, or is she stepping into a trap far more dangerous than the Moretti family? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this intense, twist-filled Mafia romance and want to hear more thrilling stories about fierce women and the dangerous men who worship them, hit that like button, share this video with your fellow romance book addicts, and subscribe for your daily drama fix right now.